What if everything we've been taught about death is wrong? When I was 19, I watched my father dying of cancer. And up until then, he had always been so strong, almost invincible in my mind. His nickname was even Buff Bob. And now he sat in that hospital bed looking like a child. Half the weight I was used to seeing, struggling to sip peach nectar from a can with a straw. And I sat there watching this man who had been so strong become so fragile. And I had zero tools to process what was happening. My religious upbringing talked about heaven and hell. But by that point in my life, that idea was so full of holes and doubts that it gave me really no comfort when I needed it most. So I just didn't know. And that not knowing made everything harder. That experience shaped me in ways I didn't understand for years. It wasn't just grief. It was this lack of preparation. The feeling that we were all just fumbling through this massive moment without any roadmap or wisdom to guide us. We live in a culture that's made death the ultimate taboo. We push it into the shadows while we desperately cling to youth, and we pretend like our own mortality is somehow optional with our aging creams and our Botox. We're the first generation in human history to be this disconnected from death. For thousands of years, dying happened at home, surrounded by family with rituals and respect. Grandmothers passed down the wisdom of how to care for someone at the end of life. Death was understood as this natural rite of passage, not a failure of modern medicine. And we've lost that. Completely. The stats almost make me uncomfortable. Death anxiety is now the number one fear in our society. We spend billions trying to avoid aging, avoiding conversations about end-of-life wishes, avoiding the very thing that is guaranteed to happen to every single one of us. Meanwhile, people are dying in isolation. Families are basically traumatized by the whole experience. And we're missing out on what could be one of life's most powerful teachings about how to actually live. But what I've discovered through my own journey and through the wisdom of people who work with the dying is this. When you stop running from death and start approaching it with respect, everything changes. Your priorities shift. Your gratitude expands. You start living each day like the gift it actually is, instead of sleepwalking through your one precious life. What if death isn't the enemy we've made it out to be? What if it's actually our greatest teacher about presence, love, and what really matters? What if changing how we approach dying could change the way we approach living? I have even been called to volunteer at a hospice center lately. I haven't done it yet, don't get me wrong, but I've Googled it 6 different times. I haven't found the time yet because littles and life, but I know that I will because I refuse to be that unprepared 19-year-old again. I refuse to let the people I love go through what my family went through when we had no idea what we were doing. Today, our guest is Suzanne O'Brien, a former hospice and oncology nurse who has been with over 1,000 people at the end of life. She's the founder of Doula Givers Institute and author of The Good Death, and she's dedicated her life to bringing back the sacredness of dying well. So in this episode, you will learn how to shift from viewing death as a medical emergency to understanding it as a sacred human experience that can teach us everything about how to live fully. The practical wisdom that people at the end of life consistently share about what really matters and how to apply these insights before it's too late. And why developing your own end-of-life plan isn't morbid, but actually the most life-affirming thing you can do for yourself and your loved ones. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777.
Whether you're in a mansion in Millbrook having your end of life or on a dirt floor in Zimbabwe, our bodies shut down the same way. And you said it, like, if you're going to allow these forces to let us just be the beehives arguing, there's never a place out of that or a place for progress. And we are so much more similar than different. When I went in 2019, I was able to do 14 doula giver trainings in Thailand. I trained Buddhist monks. It was just incredible. I trained, medical staff, community leaders, people who are at the end of life. And one of the things about it, though, is that there's a whying system. So every time you pass somebody, no matter who they were, you whyed. And what that why signifies is that I see the spirit in you. And it's 2 seconds, and it's so beautiful.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So what inspired your journey into making death and dying part of your story?
Yeah, it chooses you. And I often will tell people that are saying, how do I know if I'm supposed to work in this area of care? It chooses you. It keeps showing up for you. You're being called to it. And then when you think of serving people at the end of life, there's a connection to something, a feeling of a connection that like you've never felt before. And by the way, I've learned that that's how life works, following that heart guidance. And what an amazing thing on so many levels. So it chooses you. And I think for us to say yes to what is being asked of us from our higher selves, a greater power, is the most important thing you could ever do.
What I really resonated with your work is how you talk about how death is not a medical event, it's a human one.
Yep.
And how it has the potential to really be this sacred rite of passage instead of this crisis to fix. I shifted my views on dying, I think, as a coping mechanism, just going another route because one route hurt too much. And Ram Dass was really, really helpful because he went through this whole phase of helping his father at the end of his life and then opening up dying centers and trying to change that culture around it, modeling what he was able to see in India. And I'm curious, what inspired you to go down that same path?
Exactly that. So here's the thing, 100% guaranteed we're going to have an end of life for those we love and for ourselves. Guaranteed. And so what we're doing right now in our society and our world, death is the number one fear, is that we're pretending like it's optional. We're pushing it away. And when it shows up, and inevitably it will, when we do that, it is 1,000 times, if not 10,000 times more difficult, not just for the person, but for the loved ones. And here's the thing, somehow this fear developed around this natural experience that's part of life. And when you are privileged to be in a space where you have seen a good death, when you have been in like the threshold of that spiritual space, you will never look at life the same way in the best way possible. It teaches you so much, if not everything, about how to live. And so knowing that in mainstream medical, so if I may, a former hospice nurse and oncology nurse within the mainstream US medical system, seeing end of life for most patients not go well. I said, what is happening here? There has to be a difference. And just like you said, Melissa, it was the awareness that I learned on a volunteer trip to Zimbabwe, Africa, working in hospice, that solidified and really woke me up to say, wait a minute, death is not a medical experience. It's a human one. And we totally forgot that. And just that awareness of letting people know that, wait a second, this was a skill that was handed down from grandmother to grandchild 100 years ago. We've lost it. And look at what the devastating effects that's having. So now coming out of the system, developing a non-medical holistic, like a birthing doula, but for end-of-life doulas and teaching families, and it's changing lives. Like this exploded. And I think we're just beginning of the work that we're doing here.
What I was struck by when I was listening to all of the dying things from Ram Dass, he even talked about that time coming up to death. And so it's like, I feel like there's different levels to this where people are like, oh yeah, I can see that crossing over moment. But he even talked about his in the different state of mind that his father was in coming up to those days, or even the years before. He said how many people are like, oh my gosh, poor man, he's not who he used to be. but that he recognized that even that was preparing for something, that he could tell there was this rich inner world and he might be having these different experiences. But it reminds me of babies. Could babies understand, like coming out of the womb, having like full vision and sound and coherence? Like that would be too crazy, it would be overwhelming. And so instead they can barely see, they can barely comprehend, and they grow into that. And so my curiosity sends me to, I wonder if that same thing is happening in this aging process that we think is so sad and pathetic. But instead, what if it's this preparing for the other portal?
Okay, I love that analogy. It's so good. So this is, if I may, I'm going to go high vision here. This is what I feel like is happening. Now, I've been honored to be with over 1,000 people at the end of life from all different parts of the world, different cultures, different religions. And we're holistic beings. So we're physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, all of us right now. At the end of life, as I'm sitting bedside, as people's physical bodies were diminishing, their spiritual body was growing. And it's so amazing I just got chills. It's so amazing to be in the presence of that journey where they become they're connected to the true higher self of who they are, right? And so in those stages, I believe what's happening is just like what you said, we're a human and a being. And as the human part of us that we identify right now, everything of value too, which is wrong, by the way, what we look like, how much money we have, what kind of work we do, all our situations, in a big picture of society, that gives us value. When people are starting to lose what gave them value, their physicality, their jobs no longer when they're ill or at the end, and they're finding their true core self, there is an awakening that organically happens from an energetic frequency in those stages. And you can see this piece. I have to share this story quickly, if I may. I remember as a young hospice nurse, now I followed my heart to hospice. I had no end of life experience. I was miserable in the hospital. I thought, oh my God, the patient is like the last thing that's of concern here. This is awful. This is why I became a nurse. And I heard this voice that said, go to hospce. And I was like, why am I hearing that? I have no end of life experience. But I remember feeling this connectedness and almost like an expansiveness. And I followed it. The first day they sent me like 8 patients. I was terrified because I had no end of life experience. But I also knew that I was supposed to be there. And so that this wasn't a medical emergency that I could call. But I went to see this woman. She had ALS and she was 40 years old. So she was very young. She was already paralyzed. She was on the couch with her head propped up on a pillow. She was beautiful, this long brown hair. She had a 17-year-old daughter who was coming in and out of the house, slamming doors, just so angry. And at one point, and I'm trying to communicate, she's nonverbal. At one point, this woman's head fell off the pillow and was dangling like a rag doll. And I remember saying to her, gently, can I come and prop your head up? And I was so scared. I was a new nurse. This woman was beaming a smile at me with so much love and caring for me. And I thought, how does she have such happiness and peace and she's caring for me and love that she's shining on me when she's 40 years old, paralyzed, dying, can't even do anything? What is happening there? Now I know what's happening there, that there's a connectedness to the higher self that comes when we are stripped away of what we have felt. Now we want to find that before we get to those stages, right? So this is, I feel like the lesson of the school of life is to access that part of us and then utilize it with all of the gifts that we still have to hopefully share our gift and make the world a better place. But so powerful what you just shared about the stages of awakening that organically happen as we get closer to the departure.
What you shared makes perfect sense with me too. Mm-hmm. I'm not a religious person, but I love to study Jesus, the Bible, all of the other wisdom traditions as well. And it's just interesting to me how I've sort of already connected this idea where Jesus always said, like, blessed are the meek, or when a rich man asked how to make it to heaven, he said, give away all your things and follow me. And I feel like without the literal interpretation that so many religions have taken on, you can see the depth there. And it aligns perfectly with all of the other ancient wisdom traditions where we recognize that this material world is the trap. And it's actually through cleansing ourselves of that, through connecting, through purity, through disidentifying with the ego self, that we find that connection. And in aging, that forces us to do so.
Yes. Stop. People take that in, because this is so important, because this is the whole reason why we're here, to have these lessons, to have these experiences, but to actually undo all of the false beliefs and find our way back to the core. Now, the beautiful match would be to still be in the healthy body, to still be able to participate and to have access to that wisdom. And then to say, okay, how do I show up? Where am I to show up? And so, but here's what the end of life provides us. And this is why removing it from our awareness, which we have, to me is one of the greatest teachers about how to live, and not only, but live globally. And that's it directly to, in my mind, is related to the chaos that we see in the world, because we learn all of the truths. But when you see somebody organically get their wisdom and become their soul self and share with you what they want you to know, because there's common themes, what's important, what they want you to know to live your life fully, it changes you forever. And also changes this whole way that we're looking at this world. And it's a much bigger world than most of us are aware of.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Men today face a ton of pressure to perform, to provide, to keep it all together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the US suffer from depression every year, and it's often undiagnosed. We need to talk about this because the stigma around men's mental health is literally killing people. Real strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about opening up about what you're dealing with and doing something about it. If you're feeling the weight of the world, talk to someone. A friend, a loved one, a therapist. There is no shame in getting help. Therapy isn't just for crisis moments. It's for learning better coping skills, setting boundaries, becoming the best version of yourself. It helps you show up better for everyone in your life. BetterHelp has over 35,000 therapists, and they've served more than 5 million people globally. Their app has a 4.9 out of 5 rating based on over 1.7 million client reviews, and that tells you something. You can start a session with a click of a button. It fits into your busy life, and if you don't click with your therapist, switch at any time. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Men today face a ton of pressure to perform, to provide, to keep it all together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the US suffer from depression every year, and it's often undiagnosed. We need to talk about this because the stigma around men's mental health is literally killing people. Real strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about opening up about what you're dealing with and doing something about it. If you're feeling the weight of the world, talk to someone. A friend, a loved one, a therapist. There is no shame in getting help. Therapy isn't just for crisis moments. It's for learning better coping skills, setting boundaries, becoming the best version of yourself. It helps you show up better for everyone in your life. BetterHelp has over 35,000 therapists, and they've served more than 5 million people globally. Their app has a 4.9 out of 5 rating based on over 1.7 million client reviews, and that tells you something. You can start a session with a click of a button. It fits into your busy life, and if you don't click with your therapist, switch at any time. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Tell me about that phase of what you've seen. I know you talk about spiritualize, which you define as the sacred liminal space where people start to see a different kind of clarity. But you mentioned how they've even passed some of that on to you. What have been some of those experiences?
My life completely changed like the first day I started working in end of life for a few reasons. So number one, there is a feeling of connectedness to these other beings in this compassionate state of presence that you've never felt before. But there's also something energetically happening there. What it knocked into my reality day one was that I no longer was like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store or, oh, I have to go to the gym. It was like, I get to go to the grocery store. I get to go to the gym. Everything took on a new level of gratitude and appreciation, which is the highest frequency. Also, I treat each day like one little lifetime. And I want people to hear this because they tell me this, and also I know this, time is your greatest commodity, bar none. Because how you choose to spend it and who you choose to spend it with are your most important questions. We don't know how much time we have. It's an unrefillable commodity, and no one at the end of life ever said, I'm glad my bank account had all that money. I'm glad that I have 5 cars. They talk about their time and what they regret not doing with it. So we want to really make sure that we step into that. Now, there are things that they have shared with me at the end of life. There's a couple of things that are completely life-changing. One is the phenomenon that happens at the end of life for probably, they document almost 72% of people globally, is that they talk about, and just stay with me because I'm just saying what they say. They talk about loved ones who've died already coming back and being there to help cross them over, which is the most life-changing. When you see somebody who sees their mother for the first time in 35 years, I mean, whether you believe that's happening or not, but here's the thing. When you study the science of physics, everything is energy, and energy is matter, and matter can only be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. So it makes a lot of sense from what I'm seeing as that physical. Think of this as like your outfit of the day or the temporary, housing that we've been given. When that has its end of life, you go on, right? So it makes sense that there's a time that it seems that people have one foot in this world and one foot in the next. They also talk about, as that veil's lifting, they talk about this incredible loving energy, light. It's beautiful. I mean, it just changed. If you've ever been fearful of death, when you have those experiences, you will not only not be fearful of it, you will be inspired to say, what is life about? And what is my place in this journey?
I had a guest on a long time ago, Dr. Christopher Kerr. Have you heard of him by chance?
No, but I'll find out more.
He wrote a book called Death is But a Dream, and he had zero spiritual beliefs at all, and then found himself working in hospice. And it, as you shared, cracked open his beliefs because he saw it too many times.
Yeah.
I know that one of the arguments I just recently had on an atheist, which is funny because I'm just so the opposite, but I love bringing people together and
Sure.
finding common ground and actually talking things out. And she would argue that, people might see their loved ones, but DMT acts different in the brain towards the end of life. What would you say to that?
I'd say that we have, and this is again, let's step into the human part of our existence. We are so ingrained with needing proof and reasoning it out. So let's go big vision again. Your analytical mind, your brain, is only able to process what it's taken in this lifetime, what's happening now, and what's happened, right? So if you need to find, well, can you prove that? Can you prove that? You are living in such a small area. And when that knowing, that gut feeling, your gut instinct is your best diagnostic tool by far. It's the greatest thing. So what I will say is that I've had people with better oxygen saturations than I have, seeing what they're seeing, absolutely no medication. And you can try and reason, I don't believe that at all. So I have actually seen and felt things in the room with people, not the clarity that they have. But when you're sitting bedside with somebody, time disappears at the end of life. Like, it's so fascinating what happens. And there's a feeling of love that encompasses when that person crosses over. If there's not obviously a lot of frenetic challenges from family members, which right now there can be, which is very sad. But when it can go well, there is a sacredness to this energy. It's like lifting the veil that will change you forever. And you don't have to have somebody try and prove that to you. You are changed. And again, I really believe that we've been taught to keep it so small, and that's so sad. So when I was giving talks in the very beginning, I remember giving like a verbatim speech from somebody. And I want to share this story about this one patient that was so beautiful. And I remember after the presentations, this man came up to me, but other people would eventually, and other ones, and said, that's such a beautiful story, Suzanne, but can you prove it? And I was like, there was no doubt in my mind what I was saying. And then, well, I thought, okay, wait a minute. I can't prove it, but can you disprove it? No. So now we're on equal playing field, right? But actually, the science of physics, if you want to step into this, all your listeners, if you really want to step into this, go into the science of physics, listen to Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, like they're all talking about this energy, this higher wisdom that they followed to create the amazing inventions and things that they've done from their knowing. That is the secret. That's the key. And if you trust in that, get ready for your life to change in the most amazing ways like you could have never imagined.
I agree completely. And what I have come to find is I want to begin my deep questions, like deep conversations with one question to see if we can even get anywhere. Are you a materialism first or a consciousness first person? Because I'm following the science where consciousness is all there is. And it makes it difficult to even have conversations sometimes when there are those who believe that materialism is all there is, that it's just a material plane, and our personalities are just sort of a blip in the chemicals in the brain. There's nothing beyond that. And because in that respect, I just kind of have to nod and be like, okay, have fun with that. It's much more fun on my side.
How many Birkin bags? And also, I mean, like, here's the thing, like when you've worked with so many people at the end of life, and I've worked with some billionaires, like in the most privileged places, didn't make them happy. In fact, they have so much regret of that pathway of going for those things that, again, we're taught are going to make you happy. It's not sustainable. So now that their journey was over, they want to share that. There's nothing wrong with those things, but don't miss out on what is the real thing. So when you hear from people at the end of life, they talk about this being the school, the human experience. We're all going to go through trials, tribulations, hurt, all the experiences. And it's being able to look at those experiences from a higher perspective, like they get it organically at the end of life, to understand what the gift was providing them to evolve in their consciousness. And so again, when you've been hurt and had things, and we all have had it, and you can't get past that, it's like your prison, right? And we start like, everything is energy. And so the way that we live our life is that what energetic frequency I'm putting out daily, by the way, is exactly what I'm asking to come back. And if I'm holding on to, if I'm like, okay, that happened to me, and so I'm damaged goods, or I can't get past it, then I'm going to be stuck in that frequency forever. If I can, and here's the tool: forgiveness. It's forgiveness. And I want people to know that all paths lead to forgiveness. Forgiveness of others, forgiveness of selves is the transformational tool to release the energy. The people at the end of life who organically go into this space with forgiveness have been the most beautiful end of lives I have ever seen in my life. So immediately I took that into my life and said, okay, let's go through it. Because, we push things down. Do I need to, what do I need to forgive? What am I carrying around that I'm not in touch with, that I need to unpack and unload so I can have this beautiful, creative space to make life light and whatever I want moving forward? And it was life-changing. And it's life-changing for the doulas that come through this program as well. Changes everything.
I'm always blown away by how many people still think somehow that forgiveness is condoning what the other person did. Like, how have we not grown beyond our 12-year-old understanding?
Yeah, but just like what you said there, I think is so important, because what a sad thing that is. And this is where education, and how much time do we spend on social media and listening to the news? And if you listen to someone who could share with you what the real power of forgiveness is, it could change your life and will change your life. It's not condoning. It's okay. So let's make an analogy. It's almost like you have this extension cord that is draining your energy on a consistent basis when you have unforgiveness attached to something. This is you cutting the cord. It's not excusing, it's not condoning, but it's saying, okay, that happened. I'm cutting the cord to that. But what can I learn from this experience? Can I learn compassion for the person that was an alcoholic and out of, because whatever reason? Can I Can I look at that with some compassion for that person that's on their journey, didn't know any better for what they were doing, but I'm going to forgive because I'm taking back all of my energy. There are so many lessons within it. And forgiveness is really the most important thing that I could ever say is the tool to change your life. And understanding it, like you said, it's not condoning, it's not excusing, but it's releasing. It's releasing it from draining you anymore.
There's a growing curiosity around the use of psychedelics at the end of life.
Yeah.
From what you've seen, what do you think these expanded states reveal about our true nature?
It is the true nature. So you're living with this false understanding belief that Suzanne and a nurse and all the titles and all the things going through the experiences. And when you organically get to the end of life and that all starts to dissolve, I find my core self. Now, what I always think is so amazing, and I'll do a big piece on this, is the trifecta. So the studies of psilocybin at the end of life with the studies, what they have found with psilocybin, so psychedelics at the end of life, near-death experiences, and what I've seen at the bedside of these people as they get there, it's all the same. They're all saying the same things and they're becoming their true self. So again, it says that it's like we hold the lock and the key to our own destiny and our own prison. Because if I am not going to step out of my comfort zone, which again, like it's not comfort, it's the familiar, the ego and what my brain knows is familiar. And if I say to myself, well, you feel like you should go be a hospice nurse, but that makes no sense. And here's the thing that's important about that is because if I had wrote it down and made like a column, taking less money, more hours, less benefits, single mother, just bought a broken down 1861 house, needed that steady income to go to a job where by the way, I had no end of life experience, it would have been a hard no. But because I was at crossroads where I said, wait a minute, I followed what everyone has said. And I know I will never have fulfillment in this work. In fact, I was seeing things that really were disturbing with patients being, just not getting the treatment and care that they need. I'm just going to trust this. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to trust it. When I stepped out on that, I knew that day I went home, I was in that yard and I said, that's how life works. And when I mean that's how life works, we have two directionals. We have the analytical ego mind, which is everything put it in and very small. And we have the conscious mind, the higher mind of ourselves. And when you have the courage and bravery to step out when it doesn't make analytical sense, that's where the magic happens. So incredibly important that we need to understand the relationship with these studies that are showing there's no judgment. And this is what they're saying. And this is what my patients say. Everything was meant for a reason. And hear me out on this because I know things are really challenging for many people and at times, right? It's not diminishing the pain that we go through. But I feel like we're always, the universe, your higher self, God, whatever your belief system is always trying to lead you on your higher path. And there are signs to that. And when you're not on your higher path, it's trying to give you roadblocks to get on your higher path. So that's when the things happen, loss of the job, car breaks down. It's trying to get you to kind of wake up and change, get on that other road. And those things can be painful. So the wisest thing we could ever do is listen to what is happening in front of us, even if it's something that we don't prefer. What is the gift here? What is it trying to teach me? And that's what people at the end of life have said. Now, people with all these studies, psilocybin, they say the same thing. It's all about unconditional love. We're all connected to this one unconditional loving energy, that there's no judgment. And that's a big one, because when we judge ourselves, we can't move forward. And we all have things that we wish we did differently, but learn from them. That time is your greatest commodity, that there is no death. This was all a school of learning. This is a school of learning. Are you learning? Are you listening to the signs that are in front of you? And what are they saying?
Yeah, that's been probably my greatest just journey in this lifetime, is reconnecting with that inner voice. And there's so many things in this life that cause us to turn it off. Trauma creates this urge to numb, which I did a lot of, but then also just all the distractions everywhere. And so one of the things I'm always teaching people is know the difference between your programming and your inner voice. It sounds like it should be obvious, but it's not in the beginning of trying to go inward. That first thought, if you have just been watching the news for your whole life, is probably just going to be an echo of all of your inputs. So you've got to spend time with that stillness to get that guidance.
And I love that. And that's everything. And so so this to me is the whole goal of life, is reconnecting with the inner self and strengthening, like, think of it like a muscle. You need to exercise and strengthen that relationship with that higher voice, and also know which one is talking and when and why. And so here's an easy tool, if I can share with your listeners. If you have something that comes into your mind that you're hearing and you feel anxious about it, or it feels heavy, or you're pushing it, that's ego. That is ego. When you have something what you're like, whoo, what a great idea. That felt great. And then here's the thing. So that's what I call inspired guidance. And then you start saying, the mind says, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you move to Charlotte, North Carolina? You don't know anyone there. Like, why? And you can out talk yourself of it. And that's the thing. So you have to really know which ones are talking, but also go into how you feel. Because if it feels expansive, if it feels excited, if it feels connected, go for it. Now, unplugging, you said that, and this is really important. We are so overstimulated in our world at all times. You can't even get on your email without that news flashing across and kind of pinging your whole nervous system. You have to be in charge of what you allow in, and you have to have downtime. Unplug the news. Come on. Yes, we need to know what's going on, but do you need to know it on cycle? And it's really very damaging how it's presented. Make sure you're taking walks in nature. Like, that is one of the easiest things, to just have this beautiful walk in nature every day. Check in with your heart. Check in with your mind. There's so much depression, anxiety. I get it. How are you doing and what do you need? And one of the most important things is guard your energetic field like it's your bank account, because it is. And so just making sure that we're just not plugged in at all time, because then you're just going through you're just trying to survive the frenetic chaos. And it's hard when you see all those things. How can you ever, for me, and I think about this a lot, the work that I do and showing up, especially when COVID hit, was so incredibly important. And so for me, making sure that I balanced my time of how much I was letting in with the whole fear and unknown, because I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't be able to show up at the level that I'm supposed to help teach and hold space. And I think that goes for everybody, just in your own personal world as well.
Yeah, it blows my mind that there are people walking around that don't even realize they have the power to shift their consciousness. Like, something that I'm teaching my 2 and 3.
Well, let's teach them. Yes, we have to teach them, because here, and Melissa, I love that. And I love that the young ones are just the little masters, because they are from the light. So they do have still a strong connection, if you can help foster that and help them be aware. But I think that's so important, because here's what I think about what changes your life. It's not about people are like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? It's really, what do you need to be? And when you can simply, and that's what happened. That's why I say day one working with hospice patients changed my life. I didn't change anything. I made less money. It wasn't about that. It was a change in my perception and perspective, and it changed my life. And it can for everyone else too.
And sometimes it's as simple as just a new way of looking at something. This conversation is reminding me of a long time ago. I did an interview with somebody, and they mentioned that we've lost the concept of reverence in our generation. And I thought that was so interesting. And so I spent a lot of time trying to bring more reverence into my life, with the trees, with nature, with other people.
Yes.
And then I realized the same thing comes with the word honor. Mm-hmm. We throw it around in yoga classes, but what does it really mean to honor somebody else?
Yeah.
All of the ways that we are arguing online about these dumb, surface level, divisive political things because that's what they want us to do, you completely lose the concept of honoring another person and their opinions, however wrong those may be to you. You know what I me.
However, exactly. And so here's the thing, when we get back to it, this is again something that struck me right away with end of life. First of all, that people from all different cultures and worlds, religions and cultures were saying the same things. Even if they had studied a very strict religion, it became more of that spiritual oneness at the end, which was beautiful. But here's the thing, whether you're in a mansion in Millbrook having your end of life or on a dirt floor in Zimbabwe, our bodies shut down the same way. We are so much more similar than different. And you said it, like if you're going to allow these forces to let us just be the beehives arguing, there's never a place out of that or a place for progress. And we are so much more similar than different. When I went in 2019, I was able to do 14 doula giver trainings in Thailand. I trained Buddhist monks. I mean, it was just incredible. I trained, medical staff, community leaders, people who are at the end of life. And one of the things in Thailand, I really love Thailand. One of the things about it, though, is that there's a whying system. So every time you pass somebody, no matter who they were, you whyed. And there was different levels of whying depending on who they were. And what that why signifies is that I see the spirit in you. And it's 2 seconds and it's so beautiful. And that's what we're missing. And so we're missing understanding that every person you pass has a story that you do not know. So you may look at somebody and say, oh, they have it all. Look at the expensive suits and all or whatever, and their life is absolutely not. I will tell you this right now, that everyone has traumas and things that you have no idea. We have no right to judge each other. And can we just meet each other with non-judgmental presence? You don't need a certain election. You don't need a certain thing. You don't need a certain law passed. We all have the opportunity to choose how we show up every single day. You're either going to show up in love or you're going to show up in fear. And just acknowledging and meeting people and holding that frequency, that changes the world. That changes the world. So we have the power, but we've given it away.
Right. And if that can change our experience of one another, because think about that, you're forcing a small moment of intention every time you see another person. That has to change you, no matter how much you resist it. Like that has to change you. And so it reminds me too of childbirth, actually. So I tried to have 2 natural births. My first one, I had to transfer to a hospital after like 4 days. And so I ended up getting the epidural. And then the second one, I was able to have my home birth. And there were definitely times during my home birth where I was like, what did I get myself into? I'm on a mountain. I cannot get to a hospital even if I wanted to right now. This is really painful. And then I would switch my mind and go back to this state of honoring what I'm going through. And all of a sudden, my instincts were different. Instead of keeping my breath at the top of my chest, it's like I lowered it. And yes, it was still painful, but all of a sudden it had a lot more purpose. It changed my entire experience with the birth. And so that was my practice, was just kind of coming back to the honoring of this sacred moment and just trying to feel and speak to my baby.
Okay. So, wow. If we could teach that to each person to say, I'm showing this is a day. It's a new day. What a gift. Where am I setting my energetic frequency? Where am I setting my thermostat, taking a few deep breaths, going into my heart, having gratitude and sending love to every single person. And with intention, I'm going to live this day with sending love to everyone and every person I meet. And they feel it. I mean, I'm in New York City. It can be tough here, right? It's so busy, but there's such loneliness. When you spend 2 seconds smiling at somebody, holding a door open, giving a compliment to somebody, I'm telling you, it changes you and it changes them. Those things are free. It's just a question of intention. We can all do that.
And so now imagine if we bring that same honoring and reverence to the dying, because if we're honest, I have never once in America seen somebody honor the dying process. They pity it. And think about that. Every time you see an elderly person, you're kind of pitying them. You're kind of like treating them like a little kid. That changes you in the same way, just not for the better.
Yeah. And what kind of a message is that sending to everybody when doctors say, oh, I'm sorry, there's no more I can do for you? There is so much we can do for people at the end of life and their families. He lost his battle with cancer. What battle? Well, what has happened here? So let's And I love that because this is how we change the world. So if we go back, because I did a whole series on this and it's in the book a bit too, we've been dying for thousands of years. We know how to do this. In every single culture and religion, death used to be revered as a sacred rite of passage, and very similar things that they all say: unconditional love, being in the presence, all of that. And it's like only the last 120 years that we've made huge medical advances. But at the same time that we did that, and first of all, I just want to highlight that keeping people alive and living are two very different things. We know how to keep a heart beating and somebody breathing. That's not living. We've removed death being a natural part of the process. We do not teach doctors that end of life will be a natural part of their patients and families' support that needs to be given. We treat doctors like they failed if somebody dies. And we give the messages to everyone: run the opposite direction from end of life, do whatever you can. And there's a space within that that can be really painful physically, emotionally, and spiritually when we're trying to grasp at something that is 100% guaranteed. And why are we fearing it? We should be afraid of not living today. Today, everyone. You know, there was a thing that I read, and this man, he was 89 years old and he got a terminal diagnosis and he was given like 2 to 3 weeks to live. And he's like, God, he's like, please just give me another 2 years, please. And God says, why? He goes, I just gave you 89 years. Like, what did you do with it? And that's really the regret that's showing up for people at the end of life. It's not the fear of the death. It's the fear that they go, oh, I didn't live. I knew, and I was too afraid to really live. We don't want that to happen to us. That's stepping out of that small ego space into the guidance of the higher consciousness.
In case you haven't heard, it's officially in Abercrombie summer. The A&F Vacation Shop has everything on your packing mood board. I desperately need their new one piece, the A&F Marina. It's strapless, so flattering, and paired with denim shorts will be my go-to beach outfit this summer. Finally, your suitcase isn't complete without finding that dress. You know, the one for the photo shoot. Abercrombie's boho dresses have that perfect beachy, romantic look. Make it an Abercrombie summer. Shop their newest arrivals in-store, online, and in the app.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
So many good reminders. I remember Ram Dass talking about how in India they have all sorts of rituals around this time. And it just reminds me of what we were just talking about, where the Wayang in Thailand and that small bow, like you said, or like we discussed, it changes you somehow. Even if you feel like you're just going through the motions, all of a sudden it starts to get meaningful because you're doing it. And so I wonder too, we've forgotten all the rituals of those who came before us that help us reshape the way we approach dying. Even if it's hard to get into the mindset because you're too sad, I wonder if bringing back some of those rituals could bring it back, like break through our own resistance of it.
I believe that it will. It's like right now, I mean, think about it. We pretend that death is optional. It shows up. It's a train wreck for people because they are on hospice, usually like a few days or whatever. It doesn't go well. They have all this stuck traumatic grief because of all the things that didn't happen. And then they have to go right into trying to plan whatever it is. There's no ritual. There's no through line container for them to experience this life-changing natural event. And with that, it's completely frenetic and dysfunctional. And so ritual brings back the sacredness of it, right? The honoring, but it gives my emotion that I'm not going to be able to see this person in their physical form a place to go. And when I give direction to my family about what I want, how I want my life celebration to be, where I want to be honored, where I want to be laid to rest, it gives them a guide to be able to do that. Like there's so many important things about being able to bring back ritual. One of the most important, by the way, is home wakes. the readoption of people used to die at home, they were kept at home, but there's something, and again, we started with this in this podcast, which was beautiful. When somebody has their end of life, it's a sacred, natural experience. But what happens to me, what I think is happening to families that are, and I make everyone slow down and stop at that time, when they see that their loved one, they're like, okay, that loved one is not breathing anymore. Their body has died, but they feel them. And sometimes they feel them in that space with more love than they ever have. And so something happens inside them that says they exist, whether they're conscious of it, subconscious, or both. And that has been life-changing. And so bringing back, slowing that down, not to mention it's very financially friendly, but it also brings back the ritual. And also it seems so like a natural through line. If people want to be at home at the end of life, why are we then hitting the call button and having them whisked away somewhere that we have a 2-hour visitation? It just doesn't make any sense. And sometimes they look nothing like they looked in this life because of whatever is happening there. We don't have to do embalming. We have to also know that we have choices, which are empowering. But what about the choice I can make today that can have a positive impact on the planet for years and decades after I'm here? Choosing not to be embalmed, choose if that's what I want, choosing a natural burial or a water cremation. These things are really important choices, and they're financially friendly as well. So bringing back the ritual to it all, it's time. It's time.
Is there anything on your end of life plan that would not have been there without your experience that you've had?
All of it. I wouldn't have had an end of life plan. I really wouldn't have. And because what I've seen is the very few people that have done this organically with their families, when their loved one has their end of life, but the person had everything organized and their choices and where they wanted to be, they said as hard as it was to say goodbye to our mother, she did everything. She knew where she wanted to have her services, what she wanted to be buried in. She left all of her paperwork for us. Everything was organized. It made it so much easier. And so then when I look at that, that's from a practical standpoint. Then if you can say, well, wait a minute, I want to write my own eulogy. I want people to celebrate the life and the love. This is the music that I'd like. Ideally, I would like you to have the celebration here. It changes everything. In fact, I have a playlist too that I don't want to give it away. I wanted to say it and I'm like, oh, but they'll hear what I'm going to play, because it changes the experience back. And also it changes it for me, because I know that I am going to have, I don't want to say the last word in like an ego way, but I'm going to be able to share with them what I want them to know. And I'm also going to have the energetic celebration of my life, which I want, because I'm sharing that's important. Disposition, super important. Ongoing memory, where I want my items to go. I have certain things that are special to me. They might not be special to everyone, but I want certain people to have those. Downsizing. What an amazing thing that is as we age, for just energetic clearing, but also don't leave it for your family. Because I want to tell you what usually happens is people come in with they're just in all this grief. They come in with big garbage bags and everything sort of just gets, there it goes. That's a terrible thing. So there's lots of peace of mind that comes with that. And by the way, in the book, we have that peace of mind planner. It is a step-by-step, and it gives you such incredible information in all categories. And I think one of the most important is acceptance at the end. How do we find acceptance at the end? You find what makes a good death, and a good death is a good life. And what does that mean? It really means living each day like one little lifetime with what's important to you, with presence, with reverence, like you said, with non-judgment, and with walking outside and connecting with the awe. Like it's springtime, right? It's spring. When you marvel at the way that nature, how beautiful, there's no question that you can't be just moved by that, whether you're an atheist or nothing. But remembering that Mother Earth is giving you your food, is giving you your oxygen, is giving you the beauty. Take that in and be grateful for that. And I'll tell you, your perspective will change.
We have normalized things too much, which is why we go to another country and we're like, oh my gosh. But rarely do we walk down our own street, which many times is still a tourist area. It is for me. I went from Santa Monica to Big Bear. And my husband was always really good at that. And he talked about how his mom would just always talk about, like, look how beautiful that is. So he would, when I first started dating him, he'd stop to look at the view. And this just wasn't something that was normal for me, dating all the party guys in LA, like it was like, take you to a nice restaurant, not to a nice view. And so that's been something I've been really intentional about with my children. But all of it, including this talk about death, we had a cat die. And so I had to have that conversation. And it was one of those where I'm like, oh, didn't think about how this is going to go with a 2 and a 4-year-old. But one of the things I've done is whenever I see an eagle anywhere, which is very rare down the mountain, but up here we see them everywhere. I say, that's Grandpa Robert. That means he's here watching us. It's one of my signs. And I have a whole story about that. But it was funny because the other day we're driving and he goes, I saw an eagle, Mom. And I was like, that means Grandpa Robert's here. And then I just went on this spiel, wondering what was going to stick, what wasn't. And I just kept talking. And I was like, well, yeah, when people die, and I'm like just driving, when people die, their bodies aren't with us, but you can still feel them in your heart, blah, blah. And I talked for probably 10 minutes and they were both just silent back there. Had no idea if they're in the baby days, nothing stuck. But then like an hour later, I see him talking to our nanny. And she, all of a sudden, she starts tearing up. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, he just said, Grandpa Robert's not around anymore, but when I close my eyes, I still feel him in my heart. And it was just the sweetest thing. And like you said, this is how we change the world.
Yeah. And I think, again, I really want to emphasize that we need to honor these beautiful youngins that are coming in with being honest about the life cycle age appropriately, because it will set them up in the best way for life. Nature dies, animals dies, people die, and we haven't done that in the past. In fact, we're preventing them from even, stepping into the space. And so they're like, oh, something's wrong here. Like I should fear this. And so one of the greatest things, and I remember somebody explaining it, and it was really a beautiful way. They said, when Grandpa, I think the grandpa was explaining it, he's like, my body's getting old now and it can't hold my soul. And so this is going to go, but I'm going to be in a different place. And it's really what I believe in. It was a beautiful way to say it. But when you think about it, when you think that my grandparents did it, my parents are going to do it, I'm going to do it, you're going to do it, it's no big deal. Like we're making it a big thing when it should be a natural part of the cycle. And again, doesn't that teach us, wow, that this moment with my mom is such a gift that it changes everything. And that's how we change the world, because we get really present knowing that this day will change and we know it will. And so I am going to just love it up for everything that is right in front of me.
My favorite is Ram Dass saying, death is like taking off a tight shoe. Although it wasn't him that said that, it was his guru. But still, that's what I think about when I accidentally flip back to my programming of being fearful or grieving too much. But yeah, I've been intentional about, I think it was, I shared the story recently, but when I was a journalism major, the first thing we learned was how to write obituaries, because they follow a very specific framework. And one of the things we learn is that you're not allowed to say passed away or sugarcoat it in any way. You say like Nancy Reagan died. I don't know why I just said Nancy Reagan as the example. Never said her name in my life, I don't think. Anyways, you just say died. And something about that has stuck with me, even in conversations where I'm like, why am I having to pretend like this isn't real and giving it flowery words? And so I've used that even with my children. And there's a weird morbid point where he's like, tell me about Dog Maverick when he died. Do you have any pictures of him dying? Because he was curious. And
they're curious, and they're just such little beings that are so wise that we really need to honor where they are with all their curiosity, and if you don't know an answer, that's okay. You can still say, I don't know that. But it's interesting because we had somebody very significant with Doula Givers Institute have her end of life rather suddenly. And people loved her. And when I had to make the announcement, it came out and I said, Stacy changed form last night. And it was just so interesting how that was so organically in my being that Yes, I love that we're talking about that. When we say the body dies, it's the body dying, not the person. It's changed form. But when I now say changed form, I love that. It's just, I feel really good about it. And then the other thing that had come up is, could death possibly be our second birthday? Could it be the graduation? Could it be the birth? And are we looking at this whole thing completely wrong? Like you said, everyone treating it like pity and sorry and like something's terrible is happening, when it might very well be the exact opposite, that people are taking off the tight shoe, that they're able to be in their pure self. And I want to share this one story quickly, if I may. There was a woman who came into the oncology unit. I was an oncology nurse. And she came in, she was 44 years old. She had gallbladder cancer. She was doing chemotherapy. It brittled her bone. She broke her hip. So she was admitted. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 3 day I was doing those long shifts. And she came in Friday with her sister. By Saturday, at the end of the shift, I put her on a bedside commode. It was a turn and pivot, and she was breathing short of breath. There was nothing wrong with her lungs. That was a new finding. We both were like, what's happening here? They did testing that night. They found that she had blown a pulmonary emboli, went to her lung. This is not a good thing. On Sunday, the doctor comes in. It's a fragmented schedule on Sundays. She comes in. She's like, what is happening? What is happening? We're like, well, she has a pulmonary emboli, all this. We walk through the doorway of, I was doing rounds with her, walk through Maureen's doorway of her hospital room. And Maureen looks at the doctor and says, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for me. And I turned to look at the doctor, and tears were coming down her face. Maureen was telling the doctor in that moment that she was going to die before any of us knew it. But this is what I want to say. That night, they said at about 10:30, Maureen woke up from a nap and said, get my sister, I'm transitioning, with like all of the excitement that you would hear an 8-year-old child, you're going to Disney World. Her sister comes in. She goes, I'm transitioning. And I don't even know, Melissa, if I knew back in those days the word transitioning. So I want to ask you this. What did Maureen see, and what did she know that not only removed her fear at this time, but gave her excitement and peace? Change is your life forever.
All I can think is, thank God these spirits and past loved ones are coming to help people through, because we sure as hell aren't doing a great job here on Earth.
Well, that's what I say to people. I said, what if this was the real you could use a term, but what if this experience was the real difficult one? What if this life one? And it is a school, and it can be hard, but again, you're the one in control of how you look at something. You said it before, when you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. And so when you can look at a past experience, you can look at something happening, you have the ability to shift how you're looking at it. When you start to shift your vibration, everything around you starts to change. You start to strengthen that muscle with the higher guidance system. You start to get those impulses. And then when you take them, just wait for this canvas of this experience. If you would have told me now that I would be able to have a global institute and work with people all over the world as a hospice nurse, I wouldn't have believed you, only because I was so happy at the bedside in that moment. But because I realized right then and there that that's how life works, when it's showing up for you and that guidance, and it said, you need to teach, you need to share this, you need to go to Thailand. I'm like, when I know it, I am so tuned with that when it happens, I don't even go here. It's like, okay, here we go, because I have such a strong connection with it. Everyone has the ability, and that's the secret to being able to reach our potential of why we're here. And everyone's here for a reason. There are no accidents. So do your healing. And here's the thing that I want to say. I mean, we all know what the world is facing at this moment. When we individually do our own healing and show up for ourselves, we do show up for the collective. And that's a choice all of us have to answer every day. And again, there's no judgment if you're not in that space, but know that only you can change your life and make the choices for you. And there's a individual mind and there's a collective mind that we're all attached to. And I know that when I show up in that loving space, I do connect with all of that. And boy, don't push in life, flow. Don't push, flow. What a joy this journey can be. Yes, it can, even today, if you allow it.
I love leaving listeners with one thing to do or think about to really just bring all this into their reality. What would you leave them with?
Live each day like one little lifetime. And remember, and I often will say this, and it just makes me smile, they gave us the riddle at the very beginning, right? They're like, oh, you're a human being. There's a human part to us and there's a being part to us. Connect with the being part, follow your heart. And I'll tell you something that people say, well, it's scary I want to stay safe in this little cocoon. It's scary to stay in your cocoon because the magic is right there. And you have got to just be able to have the courage to follow your heart. Don't listen to other people. If you have something that's saying to you and you feel that strongly that you should do it, one of the greatest things you could ever do for yourself is say yes to that. And you're the only one that can. But don't miss the day. So each day, make sure that you find your moments of joy, that you're caring for yourself, the parts of nature, and choose to show up in love and watch your life change because your frequency will change. And all of a sudden, things will start to shift. So,
well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's definitely one of those moments of shifting perspective that can, like we talked about, change your entire life, change your relationships with people. And so for people that are resonating, want to learn more, where's the best place to connect and find your book, Good Death?
The Good Death. And yeah, and may I just say about The Good Death, and this is something that I really love, is people talking about it being a spiritual book, which I really love because it is a practical book about how to care for your loved one at the end of life, but there's so much wisdom that it's changing people's perspective. So you can go to thegooddeath.com, thegooddeathbook.com, or you can go to doulagivers.com. And here's what I will leave everyone with. When you bring back the sacredness of death, you're bringing back the sacredness of life. And that's how we change the world. So step into this space. We have so many free groups. We have the Good Death community. Join us. We have free trainings. We have a lot of love going on. We'd love for everyone who wants to join us to just step into this space of presence with us.
All the links from this episode will be at mindlove.com/406. Your challenge for this week is to live each day like one little lifetime. Suzanne talked about how time is your greatest commodity, and people at the end of life always say they wish they'd been more present for the moments that mattered. So this week, I want you to start treating each day as precious, instead of being an unpaid employee from Mark Zuckerberg. Check in with your heart. Ask yourself what you need. Make sure you're finding moments of joy and connection with nature. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. Also, this is your last chance to get into Story Love at the beta price. Story Love isn't just about helping you tell your story anymore. It's growing into something much bigger. I'm going to be showing you how to take that story out into the world through your brand messaging, social media, and website. Plus, how to leverage other people's audiences by guesting on podcasts and even starting your own. So yeah, this program is loaded, and you get access to all of the trainings and coaching calls for an entire year, so you really can go at your own pace. So even if this summer is busy, get in now while you still can at the beta price. You can also find all of my sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors, and you can sign up for the Morning Mind Love at mindlove.com or text the word morning to 33777 to get that daily dose of inspiration. Thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.